The saying life can change in an instant is as true as it gets.
Rudy Gobert has tested positive for the coronavirus, so
even before that night, America knew the virus was coming.
It's unbelievable when you look at the chain of events that took place on that day, and it really happened in a very short amount of time.
There will be no game tonight, and the NBA will be on hiatus indefinitely.
I was pretty confused. I never been through anything like that.
Initially, everyone was kind of shocked.
There was no thought of that it was a pandemic.
It went from Rudy Gobert testing positive to panic in different cities.
And at that point, it was just about getting out of California.
The sports world shut down. And honestly, to be honest, the entire world shut down.
What has happened in this world when that took place was like no other.
What's the date today? March 11th, 2020.
That was our last day of a normal life.
welcome to the Golden One Center once again in Sacramento.
I mean, it was a normal day. We were in Sacramento getting ready for the game versus the Kings.
Get to the arena. Everything's normal. Everybody's going through their pregame routine.
We were basically neck and neck with Sacramento, and that was going to be a head-to-head matchup that was going to have playoff implications down the road.
Our guys were excited. Their team was super excited to play us. You knew it was going to be a sold-out arena. The Kings fans are great. And there was just a buzz around the city, around the arena for that game.
You could feel a mood. You could feel this building. You could feel that the country as a whole, the league, the government, people, and it wasn't everybody, but people were starting to take this coronavirus more seriously.
And I remember that night, because we're able to watch other games happening around the NBA, I turned on the Oklahoma City-Utah game because that was a game that I wanted to keep my eye on, and realized that they weren't playing. And part of me thought, what was going on? Why was there a delay? And then all of a sudden, it came out that that game was going to be postponed because someone from the Utah Jazz tested positive for coronavirus.
Rudy Gobert has tested positive for the coronavirus, so
once one player gets a flu or a cold, it goes through the entire thing.
The flash comes out that Rudy Gobert tested positive, and the league is suspending for the rest of the season.
I mean, you know something is up when the team doctor sprinted from the locker room or wherever he was.
I remember we were sitting there and everybody's like, okay, it sucks, but are we gonna play?
I don't think anybody really knew what was going on. Nobody really had a good grasp of what the coronavirus even was at the time. So a lot of question marks and just looking for answers that really weren't there at the time.
They were asking all kind of questions, and I just told them, be ready. The league is telling us that we're going to play the game. What they're saying publicly is all the games that are slated to be played are going to play.
We were told about 15 minutes ago that the Pelicans players were told to stay in the locker room, not to come out onto the court. And then we also noticed that the officials were not out here as well. And then a reporter tweeted out that one of the three officials working tonight's game, Courtney Kirkland, worked the Utah-Toronto game on Monday. And, of course, as Woj reported earlier, it's Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz that tested positive for the coronavirus. And I'm looking out here now, and I do not see Courtney Kirkland out here.
I noticed that our teammates had been talking and were mentioning how one of the referees were involved in the game where Rudy Gobert tested positive. I believe it was Oklahoma City and Utah, if I'm not mistaken. And I can see just the hesitation around the locker room where guys were concerned and thinking of their families, and they're like, well, I don't want to potentially have this virus just because of what it's doing.
And by the way, we're in Northern California, which I don't know if you remember from last spring, but San Francisco was one of the early hotspots for coronavirus. So we all are aware of this, and we start talking in the locker room, like, should we play tonight? What's the point of playing? It seems like this could be easily rescheduled on a safer date.
Well, a lot of guys didn't want to play. Well, of course, because the guys had family. They wanted to get back home to family, make sure their family was safe. And I understood it from their point of view. Some of them were fathers saying they wanted to get back home to their kids because they didn't know exactly what was going on and it was serious. So I was all in for whatever my teammates wanted.
I think we were kind of, split a little bit because obviously we wanted to play the game. We were playing well. We wanted to make a playoff push. Kings were, similar to where we were in the standings. So, we wanted to play.
As it all happened, like my thoughts and feelings being a rookie were just to sit back and to listen, not to be too demanding or entitled.
I didn't feel like I had an added responsibility just because I was a veteran. I looked at it more from a humanity perspective. I'm a human being, and I did not feel safe. And again, I was not going to go out on the court to watch my team that night, which is, I don't stay back in the locker room if I'm injured. I like to be on the bench. I like to be with my guys, and so I thought it was important to express that as a human being, I didn't feel safe.
I think when Drew Holiday, I think when he said, I got family, I don't really want to put them at risk. Like, I think that kind of put it in perspective for everybody else. Like, we don't want to put our loved ones at risk, and because we don't know what's going on. So that's when for us we were like, we weren't gonna play. But I mean, not even 2 minutes after saying that, they canceled the game.
Kings players have gone back to the locker room as well. So at this point, Scott, we don't know if this game is going to be played at all. Obviously, the league has suspended play after tonight, but we may not see action at all.
When I go back to March 11th, I think about so many different things. But what kind of stands out is our Pelicans team didn't come out on time.
And you just saw the shot there, the other two officials leaving the court. You saw Alvin Gentry, the Pelicans head coach. He's emerged from the locker room. He's standing just inches off the court, but still no players from the Pelicans. And it actually looks like a lot of the Kings players have gone back to the locker room as well. So
I remember Coach Gentry walking out and kind of just looking around and surveying the crowd. And at this point, fans are starting to notice that something's up. They're ready, they're excited for an NBA game, but something weird is going on.
We were doing our open, Joel and I, and kind of talking to each other afterwards, this is a little different. The clock is starting to run down.
At that moment, I felt almost like, oh no, whatever's about to happen, this is bigger. This is bigger than me, this is bigger than the Pelicans, this is bigger than the NBA.
So we go on at 7 o'clock, top of the hour, local time in Sacramento, and there's 7 minutes left on the clock. Well, Sacramento's warming up, and we're still in the locker room. And I remember looking at John DeShazer going, we're not going to play tonight.
The Pelicans, I'm told, are pushing hard for this game to not be played. Team officials are on standby. There's about 3 to 4 minutes left on the game clock before this game is scheduled to tip.
I'm there waiting for the guys to come out to kind of go get content on the court, and nobody's coming out.
Now Lonzo Ball has just emerged from the Pelicans locker room. This is the first Pelican player that we've seen at all on the court tonight. We are hearing that they're going to make an announcement soon that this game is not being played, but we have not been told that officially. And again, this is the first time we've seen any New Orleans player.
The broadcast team for the Kings had come over, and Doug Christie, who I played against when I played in the NBA, told me, something's not right. And I was like, okay, what's going on? He said, I heard one of the officials did the Utah Jazz game. And this is after Rudy Gobert had already tested positive for the virus. He had done the Utah Jazz game in Utah a few nights before, and he was on the card for tonight to do our game. So basically, he had rode over in the car with all the other officials. Once I heard that, I knew, that's it. That's it. Okay, this game is not going to happen. Now it's just a matter of time of not if they're going to call it, but when they're going to call it.
JD, the Pelicans have not emerged from the locker room whatsoever. And the longer this continues, I'm starting to have really doubts about this. Let's send it back to Daniel.
According to Andrew Lopez, the game has officially been canceled.
I just remember looking around and feeling like, is this real? Like, is this actually happening? Are they shutting down the NBA? Is that really a thing right now?
I did an entire pregame show thinking that we were going to have a game and potentially, even though the NBA would not go on after tonight. And then top of the hour, as soon as we go on, we break the news that there will not be a game tonight.
The NBA, which was one of the most prominent leagues in the world, was shutting down. And, I was lucky enough at that moment to have front row access with a camera.
What's the date today? March 11, 2020.
It's funny, I look back at the footage and it's all like, some of it's good, some of it's like not the best stuff I've ever done. Kind of Blair Witch Project shaky. You can tell I was trying to figure out when it was appropriate to document.
When we're in the arena and we find out that the game is postponed, they make an announcement that the game is postponed.
Tonight's game has been postponed.
And we're announcing to our audience that the game has been postponed and the remainder of the season has been postponed, and people start to boo.
Like, people are booing. What are you booing for? Because the NBA is taking the precaution that health is more important than a basketball game?
Be proactive.
Right. If you think this basketball game is more important than your health or the people's health that are involved, you really have to take a look at yourself.
And for the life of me, still to this day, almost 1 year later, I don't understand that. I don't grasp that concept.
Listen, well, they just announced that the game is postponed and people are booing. Like, what's the alternative? What is the alternative? What do you expect the NBA to do? Do you really want players, officials, and you guys to put yourself in harm's way and at risk over sports? I get sports is important. I completely grasp the concept. We all love sports. We all love basketball. But I tell you what, I played in this league for 13 years. Never will I tell you, and I'm as passionate about this sport as you'll find. This sport is not more important than me being a father. This sport is not important than me being a husband at home with my family. I'm sorry, I cannot get on board with booing the NBA for what they're doing now. They are taking the right steps.
The thing I can look back at now is the fans obviously didn't know and didn't have some of the information we had. They didn't know that one of the officials was involved in the Utah Jazz game where Rudy Gobert had tested positive. They didn't know that. And to me, it kind of sets a scene of how important sports is in our culture.
Even before that night, America knew the virus was coming. I mean, we didn't know when or where or which game. We certainly didn't know that the New Orleans Pelicans would be on the front line right at the very beginning of the end of the way that played out in the shutdown of the season.
For the NBA to suspend the season, that's when you kind of thought about, like, yeah, this is something big that we've never seen it before.
I was pretty confused. I never been through anything like that.
You're thinking, well, have I had it? Am I going to get it? Has someone in the travel party had it?
As physicians, we had our fingers on the pulse of what was happening a world away. And we had our fingers on the pulse of that virus that was just ruthless as it spread toward us, toward our country, toward our sports league, toward the NBA. We had our fingers on the pulse, but we just didn't know anything. And I think the smartest of us accepted that we didn't know what we didn't know.
On the plane back, I was sticking to my normal playing routine. I have a fear of heights, so I just try to sleep and take my mind off the flight. But going home, I would say everyone just kind of didn't know what was going to happen next.
And at that time, my thought, when I'm thinking about the postponing of the season, is I need to get home to my family. I have a wife and 3 kids at home that I need to get home and see.
I remember getting to the plane and being like, okay, well, I'm gonna continue to document this moment. So filming the guys getting on the plane. I remember talking to Joel Myers and Jen Hale, who both sat in the back of the plane with me, and just asking them, like, what is this craziness? Joel, we're going home. How do you feel?
Relaxed and ready.
Jen, we're going home because of the coronavirus. How do you feel? Get your live reaction. How do you feel?
I want to go home. And again, we get on the plane 11 o'clock, and we flew all night long, and we landed at about 5:30 in the morning, New Orleans time.
I remember getting off the plane. There was this eerie fog that just kind of covered New Orleans when we landed, and you couldn't even see out the window when we landed. The fog was so thick.
I remember Ashley Amos took an unbelievable picture. We didn't realize this, but we're all walking back to our cars, and we were in the fog, literally in the fog, before the sun came up, and Ashley took this great picture of just everyone lined up, and we're all walking to our cars with the airport lights shining, and we're all thinking to ourselves, what in the world is going on? We have no idea. And that was March 12th, the very early morning of March 12th.
This was definitely the moment where I started to view the virus differently. Because, think 24 hours prior to, in Sacramento, I can remember walking around the streets of Sacramento, going to eat with our security team, and people were talking about the coronavirus, but it wasn't what it was 24 hours later.
Well, to be fairly honest, since I had this perspective, having family in Italy, I was pretty much shocked how slowly people were taking decisions. Because you saw what was going on, and in Italy was very bad. It's still bad, but back then it was very bad.
Man, talking about it and hearing it is crazy. And I'm thinking about it, because everybody was like the season's suspended, but talking to my agent, team and stuff, and everybody's kind of on a consensus of 2 weeks to a month. But yeah, that thing dragged on.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna, shut down for a little bit, and then, we were gonna get right back to it. But
for me, the future of the season was indefinite because I just didn't think we understood what we were up against, nor did we understand what it meant for all of us.
I'm a play-by-play announcer, and I've been in sports my entire life. And the realization comes that, am I ever going to do this again?
We had definitely taken it seriously, but March 11th sort of changed everything.
It took maybe a couple weeks before I knew that this thing was actually really real. When we didn't come back to the season, the NBA is, they really like to get work done and have us on the basketball floor. So when I found out that we weren't coming into work, when I found out that we weren't playing any games, I felt like it was really serious.
It's crazy, but I think we all were definitely falling deeper and deeper into that dark hole of just, not knowing.
But it was weird because back then, at the beginning of the pandemic, I will say for the first month and a half, we were really living week by week. So every week was like, oh, next week we'll pick a decision. And then the week after was like, oh no, we wait another week.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna, shut down for a little bit, and then, we were gonna get right back to it. But
I think the one thing that was interesting was through the shutdown, through the pandemic, was the fact that you got to give these guys room, because you just didn't know what they were dealing with emotionally, mentally, spiritually.
How do we get in front of what comes next?
I think the NBA is so big and so well run, and with essentially infinite resources, that when the NBA pulled the plug, it hit people, anybody, people walking up and down the street, people of all walks of life, of all genders and shapes and colors. It hit everybody as real.
The saying life can change in an instant is as true as it gets. I mean, I'm looking at footage from last year, 2 years ago. Stadiums, arenas are full. People tailgating, hundreds of thousands of people, like, and you fast forward, so now, you know, the arena can only hold so many people because you still don't know what's fully going on.
I've always looked at the storytelling part of athletics as a vehicle to humanize athletes. And I don't care what your profession is, what your family situation is, what your wealth is. Everyone has been affected by this in the last year. Some tragically, some more than others, of course, but everyone has had their lives disrupted.
This has been really, really difficult for everybody, and it's completely unnatural. And no one at the league level who has not been with a team really has any understanding of what this grind is like for the players and the staff and everybody else. I don't think people that can't put themselves in the shoes of people that are going through this every day can really get their mind around the magnitude of the ask and how difficult it is to have to do this without being able to go to dinner with a teammate when you're home. I mean, it's almost absurd to not be able to work through issues together. What happens is you go home and all you have are the emotions you left the building with, and you're alone with those thoughts.
As an NBA player, both in the bubble and in this current season, this is completely all up.
What I take from this experience is that first you have to put everything in perspective. So even though it has been a very hard year, I'm still a very lucky person.
The word that comes to mind is simply grateful. But at the same time, you think about everyone that went through this and that lives have been lost. And so it does really put in perspective the impact that this pandemic has had on everyone's life, whether it's physical health or mental health.
Life is fragile. And when I think about, like, my dad, I haven't seen my dad since January 26th of last year, the day Kobe Bryant died. And he had a health scare this year. And I just miss him, I can't wait to see him again. And I think for a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world, I think that's what we realize is just the importance of time and how we spend our time and what we do with our time. And so for the rest of my life going forward, I'm going to cherish the moments I get with the people I love. I think that's the biggest takeaway and the biggest reflection that I have.
It's the last day that I've seen my mom. So we're going back almost a year, and that just sounds crazy. But I was, sitting in the little area outside of Golden One Center. They have some little cafes there, and was just outside having a coffee and some lunch with my mom, just casually, like everybody does on every day they get an opportunity to visit with their parents or friends. And now going out on the road and doing something like that just sounds wild.
At that time, that night, March 11th, it was all about the NBA. But the fallout from Rudy Gobert testing positive, the fallout from our game and the season being postponed far exceeded the NBA.
I mean, we made history, of course. We're living in history right now where we never seen anything like this happen before.
It was just a surreal experience knowing that the entire NBA world and really the sports world ended that night when we were in Sacramento.
The sports world shut down. And honestly, to be honest, the entire world shut down.
500,000 people are dead in this country alone. 500,000 people are dead in this country alone. That number is easy to say and hard to appreciate. Just what that means. 1 dead is a tragedy. 10 dead is a disaster. 500,000 people dead in one country alone. I don't have words for, and I don't know that anybody does. We sit here, we love sport, we love basketball, But the death toll was so profound, and even in the face of sport, and even in the face of basketball, I'm so proud of the NBA and the New Orleans Pelicans for making decisions, concrete decisions that they would stand by and move forward down a difficult road that ultimately saved lives.